Kaizer Chiefs drew 2-2 with Royal AM, but how did this happen? Well, we have to start by looking at what went right. What was the plan of the coach? Because you see, if you looked at this game, we had that, once again, box midfield, the same structure that Chiefs always has. But instead of Frosler inverting into midfield, there was no Frosler, so obviously the players were in that midfield. We pushed Umart back into being alongside Umfana Wagamtetolo, and then in front of them, then we had someone else inverting, and it's actually not inverting this time around. It's actually Dupree on top of your screen and Mtu Shabalala. Now, this was very good for Chiefs because, as you can see, we're now inviting Royal AM to basically be inside, like, right, you see how many players of Royal AM, there is like 4 of them who are trying to mark our players man for man, but in doing that they are now limited in terms of covering the white spaces. And who is available to give us width out wide? As you can see, we have both our fullbacks, Ukros, no Solomons, being out wide, ready to receive the ball. And now the other thing is, since those guys are now wide, what does that do? It then allows Kaizer Chiefs to have easy passes and play passes even through the lines of pressure of Royal AM. And this is what also happened. We did not just have width with the fullbacks. Our wingers, Usirino, initially in our first phase of play, they were also very wide, which provided additional width, which means we're stretching even the defensive line of Royal AM. So it wasn't just stretching the first line of pressure and the second line of pressure, but even their third line of pressure, which is their defense, was now stretched. And by so doing, there were holes in their defense. And then Kaizer Chiefs were then able to exploit those holes by dropping Utuba into collecting the ball, and when the defender follows him, there is a huge gap behind him, and now we are able to have a free man, because now if you look at the top of your screen, we have a 2v1, and now we can play the ball there. And as you can see, 1 minute 29 seconds in, we have our first chance, we're inside the box, but then we mess it up. There again, that box midfield, we have 4 players in midfield, you have 4 Royal AM players being sucked into that midfield, and we have width. Now, with that width, we open spaces, and then we are able to make those passes. And also we have an option to pass the ball wide, pass the ball through the middle, and we get another option. 12 minutes into the game, we're gonna talk about the first goal, but for now we're just talking about how we did in attack with this shape. Now, if you continue looking here, you will also see that in this case you have Usirino starting wide. And let me just go back a bit so that you understand. You see that defender, he has his eyes on Sireno, because Sireno is usually further up the pitch. So now the defender is like, hey, this guy might get the ball on his own, so he wants to go and press him. But if he goes and press him, you obviously know there's going to be space behind him, right? So there is space behind him. And the secondary thing that I need you to look at here is look at Yusuf Mart. He is pointing at Gaston Sireno to say, give the ball to Sireno. Like, and he knows what he's trying to do. He knows that he has a player who's running after him, so he wants to generate more space so that Sireno can have the ball in the right spaces. So these movements were also very helpful to Chiefs, because now Mart has dragged a player out of position, and now is capable of allowing Sireno to get the ball and run into that space. And by running into that space, he's now free to look around the field and see which player he can pass. And lo and behold, there is that wide player who's now confused, because he has to mark 2 players. There is Usolomons outside of him, but in front of him there is also Utuba. So now he has a decision to make. He's caught in 6s and 7s. Sireno recognizes that the player will have to choose who he marks. And in all of that confusion, he tries to, number one, start by, hey, let me help my other defender, my left back, mark Usolomons. But then he realizes there might be a cutback to Utuba. As you can see, he wants the ball, but then there is no cutback to Utuba initially, and the defender has vacated space behind him. And then Solomons, this is what he offers you. He offers a drop off a shoulder, dribbles past the person. Now you can just cut the ball back. But even if Utuba doesn't get that chance, even if Utuba doesn't score, you do see that there are 2 players who could just get that ball and score, which is Usirino and Mart. But Utuba gets there first, and he ends up just simply tapping that in, and we score. But the problem is, while this was happening, is Solomons, as you can see there, he pulls a hamstring and is injured and is out, which meant he was going to be subbed, and on came Jabulo Blom in his place. Now, initially when he first came on, you see 16th minute on top, he was also playing the same role, which is stretch the midfield, the defensive line of Royal AM. So that was the first thing that he did, and he was able to also create those chances like minutes after coming on, and it was basically him continuing with the system. But there's a twist in this because you have not subscribed. So yeah, I'm not gonna start talking until you subscribe. I see you. Thank you. When I about you have not liked the video. Thank you. So there was this water break, ne? There was this water break, and here this is where we saw the tactics starting to change, because now we saw Blom being in midfield, inverting into midfield rather than giving us width. And we're going to come back to this point later on in the game. And the person who was now exclusively giving you width was the wingers, and you see Blom is now receiving the ball with his back, and then now the person that was pushed forward is Umar, which is how he was playing midweek. But now as that happens, you can clearly see that Blom at times it did go out wide, because remember, this is a very fluid system. You are not rigidly forced to play in one position all the time, but mainly he was in midfield, because even in the second half you will realize that yes, this is the first half he was giving width at times, but second half exclusively you can see that he was just popping up in midfield all along, and you can see the shape, it's still the same way, and Blom is right there in the middle, giving us width, adding in numerical advantage in midfield. Wait, now I'm going back to the thing. So yeah, cut that, thank Shilo. Now we move on to the second thing. The video looped and I didn't even realize. Now we go to comparing the first half and the second half. Don't worry, the video is flipped around, because if people are watching on TikTok, they can't see that side. So I'm doing this for you people on TikTok. So you can clearly see that each Chiefs in the first half were playing the ball, right? We're playing from the back, and in us playing from the back, there is, or should I say, there was a confidence, because you see, this is us, we're playing from the back, and we'll take note of this, we'll be back on this point. So we play the ball, obviously, you see that we're view with Ukros is on the left, but here it's like he's on the right. It's flipped, I told you. So you have our full backs giving us width, and you have our forwards also giving us width. So we're stretching them, and you can see how big of spaces there are between the defenders of Royal AM because of this. But also take note of how many Royal AM players are in our half. There is the man up front who's pressing us on his own. There is the four people after him. Then there is the two in front of the defense, and then there's the three in defense. Take note of this. We will come back to this, so remember it. Tana, yes, say. So anyways, so as you can see now, we were able to just play the ball through those lines because we're stretching them, and it's the same thing when we're building up. Again, we're able to find those passes through the middle, and we're also just relaxed, man. I'm showing you this because when I show you the contrast of what was happening in the second half, then you'll realize how much difference was there. But you can see we had them. They were so not disorganized, but because of how we play, we ended up getting them in this situation where we can just move the ball around and be capable of doing things like this, always finding someone who's free, because we've sucked them into midfield and we're able to just play the ball and keep on moving the ball around and behind them, because there was space everywhere. And I will tell you this, with all these chances that we missed, look at what happened then in the second half. Okay, so in the second half, you see that Chiefs starts doing these things. Sereno is shooting with his right foot. The video is flipped, but instead of passing a free player on his right, he shoots, right? So we start playing selfishly. On top of that, this is the other thing that I want you guys to take note of, because now you can clearly see that Totally has an option out wide, but what does he choose to do? He chooses to play the difficult pass. We lose the ball and they end up getting this chance, which fortunately for us, we survive it. Here's another example. We end up losing the ball and the ball comes back to us. Again, we consider another chance. We almost consider goal because we lost the ball. If you look at the defense in the first half, this is beautiful. So in our defense, look at this, how we scored that first goal. We win the aerial ball. We win the second one. We are there just fighting for the ball. We fight for the third. We fight for the fourth. Through ball, and then Utupri is in, and then now we're capable of just going in and slotting that ball in. We lead. You see in the first half, this is totally not rushing into the tackle, but going goal side to make sure that our defense is well organized. And what ends up happening is they just end up crossing when now organized properly. Here's another thing that I want you to notice from the first half is that, as I said, our width was provided by the fullbacks, but it was also provided by the wingers, as you can see on the picture. But if you look in the second half, Uplom was now inverted, which means our width was only provided on the left side of our defense, and we did no longer have width on the right side. Why is this significant? You remember when I said to you, count the number of Royal AM players who were pressing us. Do you see the number here? It's still the same. You still have 7 players of Royal AM pressing Chiefs, which is the same as what it was beginning of the game. The difference now is they no longer have to be stretched. Why? Because one of our fullbacks, instead of being wide, has gone in midfield. That is the only thing that I can blame Munabi for. He did not find a solution to this, but he was about to kind of compensate for this, because since we're not stretching this defense, what we ended up doing is Peterson would get the ball and he would try to go long. But most of the times this was just not working because the ball was getting turned over. And people were complaining about the subs, including Abo Ranga. But if you look at Ranga, Ranga came to solve this problem, because when we were going long, we couldn't win the ball. But when Ranga came in, he was now able to do this. Hold up the ball and make sure we keep position. Here he is. Gets the ball, they try to get it from him. He's still able to pass the ball back, or just keep the ball within our possession, right? There's Ranga again, keeping the ball, passing it back. There is winning a header. You see all across, you just see Ranga here holding up a defender and allowing Mart to get an opportunity, heading the ball, you know. So he was there winning us lama aerial balls, and we're able to, if we're not winning the first ball, we'll win the second ball. And that is the job of Furanga. That is the job of a striker of his frame. But now, people who blame the subs, I'm telling you now, Nyawasugela subs ga coach. Because what I also want you to note is this is the heat map. It's not the heat map. It's the momentum map of Kaizer Chiefs in their game against Royal AM. But something that you're going to find very interesting, depending on how interested you are in football, is the fact that if you look at this momentum map, the green stuff shows the times when Kaizer Chiefs were in attack, right? So you see we start the game on fire because the coach had a plan, and then there's some deep where Royal M, that purple, they're coming in, but green is just Kaizer Chiefs when they're attacking. Second half, do you see what happens? We start being on fire a bit, but then Royal M, they catch momentum. And you see when it's green, that's where Chiefs make subs. We started keeping position when Abo Samgelo, when Abo Ranga no Modi came on. Because as I said, as I showed you, Uranga was now holding up Ebola for us up front. So that's why momentum shifted towards Kaizer Chiefs. But this is not the only evidence you need to see that Kaizer Chiefs just players, they are bad in the second half when second half starts. Because if you also look at this other map here, momentum, you see in the top one, it's Makesi. Chiefs is purple on the first one. Again, Chiefs starts the game, purple ones, they are attacking and they are just dominant the whole of first half. But look at what happens when the second half starts. Yep, you can see now Makesi are in charge. If you look at the game we played against Richards Bay, you see the same thing when the second half, when the first half ended and when the second half started. Now all of a sudden Richards Bay were in charge. You see the same thing against Royal AM. Kaizer Chiefs, when the half is starting, especially the second one, they just play horrible and they allow teams to come back into games. So to say that it's the coach who made the subs and the subs cost us, no. It's the players who are always just playing in a way that allows the opponent, whether by them relaxing or is it because they just, I don't know, relax. I just said it. I do not know what happens, but you can clearly see momentum after break, we're always losing it. So it comes down to these two things ultimately why Kaizer Chiefs actually lost this game. You see this is their first goal. You have Usirino, a very good player, but he did not do good here, because I think he has enough time to press the player there, but it doesn't press him because you can clearly see that he's cautious in approaching him. And the problem with this is you cannot then be not applying pressure if your team is playing high line, but he's not applying pressure. And in him not applying pressure, you have a crossover there in our high line. He's supposed to be tracking that man, but he's not. He's now just ball watching. And the first thing that happens is Msimango loses an aerial duel. Nah? That's the first problem. Msimango loses that aerial duel, and Udot, instead of doing what I showed you earlier, which is something that he did himself without being coached by me, instead of not going to the ball and defending his pink goal side, what does he do? He commits, and then we consider goal because he committed. Not smart. Same thing in the second goal. Pulemondi, here we are. He has enough time. I even slowed it down. He has enough time to press this guy. He doesn't. The ball is played long. Once again, totally this time loses a battle. And what happens? Msimangona, instead of staying goal side, he goes, he commits. And guess what? They score the second goal. And now all of a sudden, the Chiefs have drawn a game that they were supposed to win. It's very frustrating because clearly the players could have done better. By the way, I'm recording this video while watching the Pirates hopefully end up losing against Stellenbosch. But what did you think of the game? Let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, remember, equals I pay more.